everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week we are going to be doing a pretty quick and easy alterations project. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I tend to find that a lot of things can be somewhat tight in through the upper arm. And so this week we are going to be altering this dress, which I love, but is just too tight in the upper arms. Now, I got this dress at the beginning of the summer from eShakti. And yes, I could have sent this back to eShakti to have them remake it looser in the arms, because everything else that they ever make for me, it fits just fine in the arms. However, my theorizing at the time was, no, I want to be able to wear this right away. So what did I do? I put this project off for 2 months. Yes. Anyway, I'm finally getting to this now that this is the end of the summer, and what's cool about this is I'm actually going to make this into a jumper dress. So that means I could wear this with any sort of sleeve length underneath and even wear it for fall, even though it is a very spring-like type pattern. Now, the reason that I am not just letting out this sleeves is because eShakti makes their clothes with the regular 3/8 inch commercial seam allowance, and unfortunately I think I need more than about 1/8 of an inch to take out of these sleeves. They're just too tight. As you can see, I basically can't even move my arms forward. This is my range of motion because the sleeves are just too tight all the way through. So I'm turning it into a jumper dress and I'm taking off the sleeves, and I'm showing you just how easy it is to take any sort of dress or blouse, etc., and turn it into a sleeveless version, in this case a jumper dress. And if you know me and my channel, you know that I love jumper dresses. So I'm very excited to get multiple seasons of wear out of this fun dress. So let's go ahead and we're going to start by just seam ripping off the sleeves. Now, whenever you are looking at something that is commercially made, you will tend to find that not only is there a regular stitch line, but there is also the serging that encompasses both sides at once. So unfortunately, we do have to pick both of these out to be able to get to the seam allowance. Now, if you find that you don't actually need it this wide, like you don't need your seam allowances this wide, that's fine, just cut it off. But for me, I'm going to go through the task of unpicking it. I highly recommend these Clover seam rippers. I'll put a link to them down in the description, but I find that they are the sharpest type. Now that said, I do need to get mine replaced. Mine are very old, so mine is not as sharp as it could be. I wanted to show you what I think is the speediest way to do this kind of seam rip, where you are ripping multiple things at once, including the serging. So I like to go in underneath the edge of the serging like this, and then just rip through a whole bunch of that all at once. And what that does is that it then allows you access to the seams in here. And there are 2 lines of stitching here. There's the stitching that was part of the serging going along this way, and then there was the other actual seam in there. So now we can go through, now that the serged edge is out, and we can just unpick it this way, where you're getting multiple threads all at once. And I find that that is a much faster method than having to unpick every single little individual stitch. Also, I do want to point out one thing that eShakti has actually saved us the trouble of doing, which is you might notice there is an additional line of stitching in here. They have actually basted the lining on this to the outer fabric, so we don't have to do that. If you are taking something apart and you do have a separate lining from an outer fabric and it has not been basted together, you might find that you want to put some pins in as you unpick the seam so that your lining won't drift away from your outer fabric, and then you'll want to go in by either machine or by serger and baste that together. So as you can see, these sleeves are now removed, but of course we do actually need to finish these edges. So I am just going to take some single fold bias tape, pre-made, from Joann's, and put this right sides together, sew it on right sides together, and then turn it to the inside. My guess is I will probably hand sew the other side of the bias tape down, but you can also sew it by machine. You're just obviously going to see that stitch line on the exterior if you do sew it by machine. So it's up to you what you choose to do, but either way, it's pretty quick and easy. So let's go do that. But there are also a couple of other things that I want to do to this jumper, because now that I have the sleeves off, I can see where there's a couple of other flaws that I wasn't able to notice when my arms were losing improving circulation. So the main ones here are the fact that I'm getting a little bit of gapping right here and even right here because these buttons are spaced so far apart. There's just no way that a button that is like, what, 4 inches or something like that from the next button is going to be able to remain like fully close together when under any sort of strain or pressure. And of course, the bust area, you're always going to have buttons that are like under strain and pressure, which is why you should not space your buttons so far apart. So what I'm going to do to fix these areas but still have it look just the same is I'm actually going to do my secret button trick, which I have talked about in a completely different video. So I will link that video down below in the description and also right up here if you want to go check that out. It's a super quick tutorial on how I do these secret buttons, but basically it's a button that is kind of inside out. So instead of putting your buttonhole on the exterior side of the fabric, you are actually going to put your buttonhole on the interior side of the fabric, and you're going to put a button on the inside of the exterior. So it closes down and that button faces in towards you, and nobody is any the wiser that you have a button in that area. So I'm going to do that in both of these 2 places. This one is fine because it's not under any sort of strain, but I'm going to put 2 extra secret buttons in here to fix that sort of pulling that I'm getting in those areas. And this is what our finished arm's eye looks like. So you can see the nice clean edge on the outside and then the bias binding on the inside. I did decide to sew that down by hand, but you could of course also just stitch along with a machine. You just would see the stitches on the outside. There are also a couple of other changes that I want to make to this dress. One of them I think is very obvious, is that the lowest button is what you see buttoned right here. There's nothing below that. So that means that the bottom, like over a foot of the skirt, is just open. And since I wear a tulle petticoat with all of my skirts, it means it hangs open and it shows the petticoat. So what I do when I have skirts like this is I actually sew the overlap shut so that it is literally just sewn down below that last button so that you don't see the petticoat gapping in there. The other thing that this is doing that I am most likely going to do, but I am going to do the sewing that shut first to see if I need to, is that I find that sometimes with the eShakti dresses that have built-in slips like this one does, as you can see right here, this is just a cotton voile slip that's in there, but it is not actually the same skirt width as the over skirt. And I feel like this slip kind of gets hung up on my slip here and doesn't really have enough volume to get all the way around. Now I have already detached it from the outer skirt. There was actually a little chain stitch tie that held the 2 together. I did that even just when I got it in the first place. But I think that I may also wind up cutting away the slip from this front seam right here, because as you can see, it is attached into the front seam, sewn all the way up to the waist and beyond even. And what I've noticed is that sometimes with these eShakti dresses, this slip is actually pulled tighter than the outer fabric, and the outer fabric winds up getting pulled up to meet and to accommodate the slip. And I can't really tell if that's happening with this one, and I won't really know until I sew that shut anyway. But if that is happening, what I'm actually going to do, and what I've done before, is to cut the slip away from this front seam. I don't bother seam ripping it, I just cut it, and then I give it its own hem on the slip so that it hangs away from the front and it's really only attached into the outer skirt up at the waist. I have now sewn together that bottom section, but I feel like, maybe it's just me, I feel like it is pulling up a little bit there, and that is most likely because of that liner. So I am going to go ahead and cut the liner out and hem the edges of the liner so that it doesn't actually come together in the front. And here we go. Here is the finished jumper dress. It is fitting so well now, and I think it is just so flattering, and I've always loved the print. I mean, that was why I got this dress in the first place, and then for it to arrive and be that tight was definitely disappointing. So I'm so glad that I finally took the time to be able to fix this, and now I have a new dress that will not only work for summer but will actually work year-round because I can wear longer sleeve shirts underneath it. So win-win for everything. So hopefully this was a helpful little alterations video for you, just kind of showing, you know, what you can do with something that maybe doesn't quite fit right, or maybe isn't like laying right, or there's just something that's a little bit off about it. You can fix that. I believe in you. All of these were very, very easy fixes, and I am fully confident that even beginner sewers can handle any of these types of fixes. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon, and if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and sometimes additional content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to take this time to thank all of my absolutely wonderful patrons, without whom I could not be putting out this much content whatsoever. Seriously, you guys are awesome, and particularly a huge thank you to those patrons at my Romantic, Victorian, and Edwardian level tiers, who are Mirage, Jean, Janelle, Audra, Emily, Kim, Maria, Sarah, Tiffany, Liz, Kimberly, Nurse Anita, Linda, and Chaos Chan. Thank you all so, so much. Again, seriously, I could not do it without you. And thank you all for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!